Jacob's life was marked by twists of fate, where deception often seemed to follow him as closely as his own shadow. Born the younger twin, Jacob had always been a man of cunning, his sharp mind setting him apart from his brother Esau. But in time, the very deceit he had once used to outwit his brother would come back to haunt him in ways he never imagined. It began years earlier when Jacob, a quiet but clever man, found his older brother Esau stumbling home from the fields one evening, weak with hunger. Esau, a strong and impulsive hunter, had always acted on his emotions, and in his desperation for food, he pleaded with Jacob for a bowl of lentil stew. Jacob, seeing an opportunity, proposed a trade: Esau's birthright, his inheritance as the eldest son, for a simple meal. Esau, driven by hunger and frustration, agreed without a second thought. At that moment, Jacob became the heir to the family's blessing, though it would take more than just a trade to secure it. Later, with the help of his mother, Jacob deceived their father, Isaac, who was old and blind. Wearing Esau's clothes and covering his arms with animal fur to imitate his brother's hairy skin, Jacob stole the blessing intended for Esau. The blessing, meant to confer leadership, prosperity, and God's favor, was irrevocably given to the wrong son. Esau's fury was immediate. Enraged at his brother's betrayal, he vowed to kill Jacob. Fearing for his life, Jacob fled to the distant land of Haran, to the home of his uncle Laban. The beginning of Jacob's deception. After traveling for many days, Jacob arrived in Haran, where he met Rachel, the daughter of Laban. She was beautiful, and Jacob's heart was captured at once. He worked up the courage to ask for her hand in marriage, and Laban, her father, agreed, but only under one condition. Jacob would have to work for 7 years in exchange for Rachel's hand. Those 7 years passed like mere days for Jacob, who was driven by his love for Rachel. The nights were long and the work was hard, but thoughts of Rachel kept him going. He envisioned their life together, imagining her as his bride, and nothing seemed too great a price to pay for her. Finally, the day of the wedding came, and Jacob's heart swelled with joy. But when the veil was lifted, his joy turned to shock and dismay. The woman standing before him was not Rachel, but her older sister Leah. Laban had tricked him. When Jacob confronted his uncle, Laban simply shrugged. "It is not our custom," he explained, "to give the younger daughter in marriage before the elder." Laban offered Jacob a new deal: work for another 7 years, and Rachel would also be his wife. Karma comes full circle. Jacob could hardly argue, for what Laban had done was, in a way, a reflection of his own past. Just as he had deceived his father and brother, taking what was not rightfully his, now he too had been deceived. Leah, who had taken Rachel's place in the marriage bed, was his bride, much like how he had taken Esau's place to receive the family blessing. Jacob's heart was heavy, but his love for Rachel did not fade. He agreed to work for another 7 years. The days were long and the work was tiring, but Jacob remained patient. He could not escape the irony of his situation. The trickster had been tricked, and the deceiver had been deceived. But perhaps this was the lesson he needed to learn, a lesson about the weight of deception and the cost of betrayal. After 14 long years, Jacob finally married Rachel, the woman he had always loved. But even after winning her hand, the scars of his past lingered. He had 2 wives now, and though Leah loved him deeply, Jacob's heart belonged to Rachel. This would create tension and rivalry between the 2 sisters, a family dynamic that would complicate Jacob's life for years to come. The moral of Jacob's journey. Jacob's story is one of love and deception, where the consequences of his actions rippled through his life. The years he spent working for Rachel were not just a test of endurance, but a lesson in humility. The trick he had played on Esau followed him into his marriage, showing that no act of deception goes without consequence. In the end, Jacob's journey was not just about earning a bride, but about learning the value of honesty, patience, and the lasting effects of the choices we make. What he did to Esau, deceiving him and stealing his blessing, was mirrored in what Laban did to him. And through this, Jacob came to understand the true cost of trickery, a lesson that would stay with him for the rest of his days.